Welcome to the official podcast of the Brewmasters Club, craft brews and geek news. Sit back, pour yourself a pint, and let's get into it. Now here's the founder of the Brewmasters Club and your host, Donnie Gallagher.
Welcome, craft beer fans. My name is Donnie, and this is the Craft Brews and Geek News podcast. I am speaking today with a very cool member of the Brewers Association that has lended a few moments of their time to talk with us. Ms. Julia Hers, how are you?
Hi to you and your beer lover listener.
That's right. Every one of us out there are beer lovers, that's for sure, and of the craft variety in particular. I just wanted to take a few minutes to say thank you very much for being on the show with us tonight. This will be a lot of fun, and what we're going to do is record this now as its own kind of private episode for the Brewers Association. We'll post this up as its own, and then we'll also dissect it on our Thursday show when we actually talk about our regular programming. So thanks again for being here. Just to let everybody know out there, what is your role within the Brewers Association, and what kind of stakes that you have in some of the recent news, namely the independent seal and this new campaign to take back craft, which we'll get into in just a moment.
Sure. The Brewers Association, for those of you that don't know, is the national nonprofit trade group that represents the majority of breweries in the United States. I'm talking to you from Boulder, Colorado, and we definitely have staff based here is our home base, and then we have staff all throughout the country. And what you're asking about is the Independent Craft Brewer Seal that we launched late June, which we now have more than 2,400 independent breweries from the U.S. They don't have to be members of ours even, but if you are a craft brewer in the U.S., you can use that Independent Craft Brewer Seal. Happy to talk about that, but we want people to seek the seal and look for it if independent ownership in breweries matters to you. And then our second recent effort, at least on the promote side, because we do a lot of protect work, we do a tremendous amount of work on safety, sustainability, and technical side of brewing as well. But on the promote side, TakeCraftBack.com is an amazing new grassroots effort, and you should check out the website if you haven't. We're really using the funny in this one, and we're not used to doing that, and that's a beautiful, freeing thing, because I find that funny helps, open doors to the heart that then opens thought to the mind, and we're really going after trying to highlight that small and independent craft brewers have been affected by the buyouts from big beer. And, breweries large and small have a right to run their breweries in any manner they want. But if we want our advanced beer culture to stay this way and continue to advance, we need to remember to support small and independent craft brewers. And there's a lack of transparency going on now where it's really hard for a beer lover to know when they're holding a beer in their hand if it's from an independent brewery or not. So a lot going on to really just help keep the movement going.
Absolutely, and you covered a whole lot of ground in that opening statement, so thank you for that. You said a couple of things about touching the heart to reach the mind. That's really crucial, and I'm sure you guys understand as well as our listeners, and we do, that craft beer is more than just a thing, a fancy saying or a way to impress your friends at a bar. I mean, it really is a passion, and you're speaking to a group of guys who are not only passionate beer fans, but have developed into home brewers and are on their 30th, 35th, a batch at home. And we've got a network of guys here that we actually meet with weekly, and we talk about this kind of stuff, and we share recipes, and it really became like a passion and a hobby, that is kind of really nationwide at this point. So we're big fans, and we're really on board with a lot of what you guys are doing here. But let's backtrack just a minute. So you spoke about the independent craft seal. Just off the top, of course, if you're not familiar with what this is, it is basically a emblem to establish yourself as a craft brewer. But can you speak to those to the touch points? What makes you, or what is identified as the independent craft brewer?
Absolutely. And real quick before I answer that, I'm a home brewer, and I went to college in Tampa, and many of the people that you are probably talking about are near and dear to the spirit of my heart and what's going on. And so I love being a home brewer. And the Brewers Association, in one iteration, we actually started in one iteration under Charlie Papazian as the American Homebrewers Association. So homebrewing's huge to this whole effort, and your words, just you're preaching to the choir. Yeah. And this is so important. And so back to what that seal means. In the United States today, we have 5,700 breweries. There is, frankly, still 1,000 towns or more that have populations of 10,000 or more people that don't even have breweries yet. So this movement and momentum is still going and has room to grow, but the cooling off of growth is really starting to occur. So the Independent Craft Brewer Seal is a certified mark to say from the Brewers Association that you are a craft brewer. And what that means is you are small, producing less than 2 million barrels of beer a year, and you're independently owned, and you are traditionally practicing in the beer you make. You don't make flavor malt beverages as the majority of your beers, for example. And 98% of the 5,700 breweries in the United States today are small and independent. But yet that group of 98% of the breweries only has less than 13% of the beer share by volume. So if you are really setting out to do things right, and as the National Association representing the interests of small and independent craft brewers, and frankly, we're a membership-driven organization, the members want this type of advocacy, then these are the times to get ahead of it, because we're having a cooling of growth, and it's really important because in 3 to 5 years, we don't want just to see like the illusion of choice in the marketplace and just have beer brands that are full-flavored and world-class, sure, but from one major producer. So it's very important to really get ahead of it and just make sure that when we're talking about beer in the US, if people care more than just about convenience and they want to go that extra step, we hope that they also care about supporting small and independent.
Well, it is important, like you said, and you know, I was reading something very recently about that kind of cooling off factor, and we can get into, you know, how aggressive you think that really is, but what a brewery does for a small town, like you mentioned, or having one down the block, it not only, you know, it provides that option to have, you know, this really hardworking, passionate person producing this beverage. It actually provides economic value beyond the scope of just having beer down the street, like you said, or convenience. You know, there is lifeblood being pumped back into these local economies because of the brewery that happens to be down the street or on the corner. And the fact that there's still room for that in some of these areas that have the 10,000, you know, minus a brewery, that provides a lot of hope for folks that say, like, you know, I've been home brewing for 10 years and I really should just try it out because a little guy like me just might be able to make a difference. And there's actually 3 or 4 of them here. Just I could throw a dart and hit a couple of them that are the same kind of story. Just a good old, you know, passionate person that wanted to do something in the beer industry and found, you know, a real calling with it. So we applaud that. And I think you're absolutely right. We have plenty more of this story to tell.
Yeah, so cool. And you're preaching the good word. I mean, craft brewers donated more than $73 million in 2016 to charitable causes, and that's our estimate. It could be even higher. And so I commonly say that craft brewers use their craft beers as a cause for other causes. And so you and I and your listeners that are listening to my voice all know, if you're a beer geek and a beer lover like us, you know somebody that got into beer, not just to make kick-ass beer, but to make the world a better place. And how cool is that as an avenue for your business? So it really is super fun. And the economic contributions, you're very, very pointed and correct on that. $67 billion through the 3 tiers comes from the craft brewing community, and you know the number of jobs through the 3 tiers is over 400,000, and 129,000 direct, full and part-time jobs from small and independent craft brewers. So we really got a lot of good to cheer, and it's a positive message. And back to TakeCraftBack, you know, and kind of poking fun at big beer and saying, hey, you guys bought up. You've made, you know, since 2011, Anheuser-Busch InBev, you bought 10 formerly independent craft brewers. Well, it's time to buy you. So you can't buy any more independent craft brewers. And it really is kind of tongue-in-cheek, you know, throwing our little feather duster around to tickle the nose of, you know, the concept that it's okay to also say that we have a voice. And so through that TakeCraftBack effort, we're using that, and people are coming out of the woodwork jazzed as all get out. And so it's been really exciting week because we just dropped that effort, and to really see the response and the applause in a positive way. It's all positive. It's not talking about what beers are good and bad, but it is definitely talking about business practices and approach. And I'm just here to say that craft brewers have a voice too.
So I want to continue exploring that, but before we do, I wanted to bring up something that I neglected to mention to you, and I should have when we first started the conversation. Our group here and the folks that hang out with us and that our listeners that resonate, we started a movement called Florida Craft Beer Day, and that's on February 15th every year. We've actually gotten the city of Tampa to recognize the official holiday. I call it a holiday. It's really just the city recognizing the day as a significance, because on February 15th in 1897, Ybor City, which you're familiar with if you're a Tampa Tampanian, yep, then you understand. Ybor City had the first brewery in the southeastern United States. It was actually called the Florida Brewing Company, and it served. I
remember it from college.
Yeah, it served folks like Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, years and years ago. Of course, the brewery has since long been shut down and is now converted to a beautiful law firm who the owner is very passionate about craft beer as well. And he actually offered to let us come into the building and signify this event. We've got I'll send you some links to a couple of videos and things we have online about the event itself, both last 2 years that we did it. But that's just part of the recognizing that we do. To your point about the economic value, the jobs, right? It's not just about beer or about going out and getting blitzed. I mean, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars in federal state taxes that were paid. I've got it up now, $1.2 million in wages and salaries. I mean, there's just lots and lots of value that craft beer brings all over the place. So with all that said, this TakeCraftBack initiative. So you mentioned there's some poking fun at it, but I mean, what is the real goal here? Is it to say, listen, wake up in this fun and really, pardon the pun, but refreshing way to talk about craft beer, and by taking a stab at an industry giant that has, I remember the 2015-16 Super Bowl ad about a peach IPA, that the stab there. I mean, they've got some swagger that they're throwing around at craft beer. So it is refreshing to see craft beer throw a little bit of that shine back at them.
Yeah. One of the goals would be great, right? Let's fictitiously pretend we actually were to buy AB InBev. And we would like to see that beer lover demand in the marketplace is what sets the shelf and the restaurant menu. That would be a great goal to get to. And right now, just based on the power and the prowess of big beer, which is frankly to be admired, right? Like, they're so powerful. They are helping decide what gets on the shelf in the restaurant menu. So love to see beer lovers setting that tone and having retailers really in tune with what their customers want, and not being swayed and distracted by behind the scenes conversations that aren't always advantageous, frankly, to the retailer sales, and really reflective of what the customer truly would buy. And we're all about different beers, different occasions. It's not about isolating to one specific brand. We're on a big beer journey in this country now. And frankly, finally, we have diversity in beer. And the U.S. is the #1 destination for beer on planet Earth. And part of that is because of big beer. And, they got American lager on the map. But what craft brewers did is they brought the full flavored movement to the scene, and the localization of beer movement, and brewery tours and brewery tourism and economic benefit, and that cultural contribution, Danny, that you're talking about. So it would be really cool to make sure that our beer diversity just continues to thrive, and then also to make sure that small breweries actually continue to thrive. You're hearing about more closings. We track openings and closings on our website, brewersassociation.org, and 2017 numbers are going to be different than in the past. Not doomsdayer numbers at all. We've been under less than 100 closings for the last few years, but you're hearing about more and more isolated incidences, and I'll be interested to see where those numbers come about. And frankly, a lot of that is because it's just become, not as a positive marketplace. It's a little bit anti-competitive. So we want to see some of that rectified with this effort.
I totally agree. And you mentioned, who it benefits. It benefits the retailers. Choice benefits the consumers. Competition benefits the thrifty, spender out there. But it also helps in a number of ways, like what we were trying to do, as I was explaining to you before we started this. I actually worked for AB for 5 years, a long, long time ago. What I learned there, learning from a giant, from, like you said, someone that produces high quality beer, we understand that. People are very fascinated with pairing beer and food, and that was something that never left me. It resonated to the point of where we actually started what we're doing now, to try to get people to open up their senses and try something different, try something new, and try it with food, try it with a steak, try a full-bodied beer with a spicy dish, or try, a sour with something creamy. Who knows? Like the flavor that you can try and pull out of there is really incredible. It not only helps the flavor of your beer, it helps the flavor of your food, just like a wine would, but it's differently paired, right? Balance, contrast, complement. But the way that you can expand your palate to really enjoy and get the most flavor out of that some of that stuff too, takes craft beer to a level that wine can't touch. And that's what we're all about.
Yeah, awesome. And then it gets beyond just the business of beer, right, to the beauty of beer and the sensory side. And I am so on that train. When I took over for my role here at the Brewers Association as craft beer program director, Ray Daniels, who started the Cicerone program, had left. And to start that program, the Cicerone program, and I had to fill his shoes. And I knew a lot about beer, but I did not know a lot about beer and food pairing. And I went from 2007 until 2 years ago on such a journey that then I ended up co-authoring the beer pairing book, which is now everything I could ever want to hand a beer lover, a retailer, or a brewer to say. What you just said is that beer just has so many attributes compared to wine. And if you just take into account the malt alone, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, what happens with lower temperature kiln malts and then more advanced specialty roasted malts, and those flavors, that strata of flavors from, white bread flour to cashew to graham cracker to biscotti to caramel, all the way up to, Vienna smoked malt flavors, and then chocolate pudding into coffee, and you get the picture. That all fits so well with grill roasted and smoked foods. And
Sure.
so beer, just on the malt profile that I explained, already has a leg up on wine. And then beer has varying acidity levels, which is why wine has become so well known with pairing. And then also, too, on top of that, the carbonation scrubs the tongue, as Garrett Oliver has taught so many people from Brooklyn Brewing. It gets ready for the next bite. And then the hop profiles are used like herbs and spices, as a chef would. So there's so much. And I had to force myself. And now I am just so on the train of beer pairing. And our website, craftbeer.com, has every resource we can put together on pairing. And check it out, craftbeer.com/culinary. There is some amazing resources there, and we want culinary institutions to start teaching the chefs of tomorrow beer on the same level as wine, and we still can't document one of several hundred. So we at the association not only are about promoting independent craft brewers and protecting them, but trying to really get on the foodie side, the food world, to treat beer on an even level instead of always being this beverage that's aside from the table. It's a part of the food experience as well.
Absolutely. In our website, we have pairings that we actually update as frequently as we can too, because that's one of the, like I mentioned, that was one of the most exciting things that we learned. At the end of the day, beer is food. I mean, it's made of ingredients that are food. I know that wine has, ingredients and things like that as well, but beer is a food. And when you think about it like that, you can really explore some of those flavor pairings and those tastes and different attributes that you can pull out of both items there. So that's really exciting to learn about the chef pairing, because you're right. The chef of the future, when you think about a brewery being on every corner, we'll have those kind of tools to play with in their toolkits. So it's very exciting. I've got to ask you two more questions, because I know we're almost completely out of time here. So I have two more questions, and then we'll kind of circle back on anything else that you want to mention. But one question we always ask every person that we interview, and I want to hear what your answer is. I think I know which direction it's going to go. But if you could have a beer with anybody, past, present, fictitious, fake, real character, historical, doesn't matter, who would that person be and why?
I still always would answer my dad, who's alive and well in Maryland, D.C. area. He's the one that got me into food, into being experimental with my palate, and kind of was always one of my cheerleaders. Not to say I wouldn't have a beer with my mom, but if I had the two of them to choose. And to me, it's a fun answer to say somebody from your family. That's my answer.
Awesome. That's a great answer. We get that. We've gotten that before too. It's good. That just goes to show you, like a teacher in your life, or like a special moment in your life. These people are here, and we share these things. It's beyond your taste, your smell, your palate, right? It's now it's a thing that you'll always have to share, regardless, where the person is that you want to share this beer with. They've made an impact on you that resonates as strongly as it does. So it's admirable. The answer is A-OK. I love it. So thank you for that. The last question I had is, of course, before we let you go, please, we talked about the website for TakeCraftBack. We talked about, where people can find you, but really, what is if you're talking to a bunch of people, these people are maybe in their car driving to work, or maybe they're at work. How can they help? How can they influence the future of craft beer? And really, what are the parting words that we can leave these folks with in regard to the Brewers Association?
Well, I mean, the easy get is just remember to mix in beers from not just your national breweries and your regional breweries and your local breweries, but mix them all in, right? Experiment and kind of jump around. That way, every beer has a fighting chance to maybe become one of your favorites, instead of just focusing only on big beer or focusing on only local beer. And then the current effort of TakeCraftBack.com, we want you to do a pledge of support. We mean it when our numbers are starting to add up, and we're not collecting any dollars until we get to $213 billion.
2.4 million so far, right? 2.4. I'm looking at it right now.
We're in the first week.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. But the thing is that if every person on the planet gave $10, we'd still only be a third of the way there. So if we got there, then we want to collect your money. But it's going to be a tough road. But we're here to fight it. And craft brewers are entrepreneurs and eternal optimists. So we're on that journey. Get involved in that. And then, like I said, support multiple beer brands from multiple producers. And I think that is two easy things.
Okay, excellent, Julie. Well, thank you so much. Again, my name is Donnie. This is Craft Brewers Geek News. Thank you all for listening. Julia, anything you want to send us out? Is there a Twitter handle? Is there a hashtag Take Craft Beer Back?
Hashtag TakeCraftBack for sure.
TakeCraftBack. Okay,
yeah.
Definitely. We'll make sure that we highlight that, of course, when we actually release this episode here, and then when we talk about it next week as well. So, Julia, thank you so much. I can't say enough how fun this has been. We hope that you think about us in the future and maybe come back on the cast a little bit later and give us an update.
Yeah, and I was in Tampa twice last year. If I'm in Tampa, I would love and be honored to have beers and food with you and geek out a little. That would be super fun.
That sounds fantastic. I'd love to take you up on that sometime. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right, bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the official podcast of the Brewmasters Club, Craft Brews and Geek News. Grab a beer with the guys and be sure to subscribe to catch additional content. Add this podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. Chat with the guys on Twitter at Brewmasters Club and Facebook and online at www.brewmasters.club. Cheers!